welcome to another BoBeats video, and today I am picking up something very exciting. It was actually a video by K.O II that made me go out and buy this immediately because it looked a lot of fun. Look. So I must give it to Teenage Engineering. Not only was the unboxing experience quite satisfying, even though it's very basic materials, like the box isn't anything special, it's just a very satisfying experience. And something that I was a little bit worried about was the overall build quality of the device. Having it in my hand, it actually feels very good. If you worried that it would feel like 3D printed plastic, rest assured, it does not. It feels very good, and the keys, the little buttons, have a satisfying click. Next up, I want to share my first little beat that I made with it, and then we'll discuss what the K.O II is and what it isn't, because it's a super hyped device. They sold out in just a matter of hours, I suppose. And with that, I think there will be also a lot of confusion, maybe some disappointment about what this is. So we have to address that. Oh, and a super quick note on build quality. I just heard that some people are having issues with their fader. My fader works fine. I was very careful when I put on the little plastic cap, but I also had another issue that might be build quality related, and I'll talk about that in the opinion section of the video. So what is the K.O II, and more importantly, what is it not? It is not an SP404 Mark II, for example. It's not an MPC or a Machina. They are much more advanced devices when it comes to sampling, and they have a ton more sampling memory, often expandable storage and so on. So in a way, it's much more closer to, say, a Circuit Rhythm or a Sonicware Live and Lo-Fi 12. Now, those devices are also quite different in the way that they work, but they are similar in that they're kind of limited samplers with a more accessible, hands-on, quick workflow, because it's frankly very easy to learn the K.O II. So if you buy the K.O II expecting this powerhouse of a sampler, I think you will be disappointed. But if you're looking for a fun instrument, a small sampler that is portable, battery powered. You can sample, play back sounds polyphonically, chromatically, you can time stretch, you can sample chop. Yeah, then this is it. And the workflow is easy but takes a bit of getting used to, so in the next section I'll show you how to make music on it. And a big thank you to DistroKid for sponsoring today's video. So if you make some music with the K.O II and you want to release it to the world, go and check out DistroKid. I have a link in the description. If you use it, you do get that discount and you do support the channel. And it's a great way to upload your music to Spotify, iTunes, and other relevant stores like Tidal, for example. And at about $22 a year, DistroKid is also very affordable. So go and check them out. So how do you make music on the K.O II? Well, first up we have these pads here that you can load with samples. So here we have a kick. You can select a new slot and we can use shift here to quickly find a snare. New slot. Now if I want to make a little beat with these samples here, I can either step record or live record. Step recording is a little wonky. This is definitely best for live recording because step recording requires you to move through the different steps like this. Put down a step, go here, put down another one, put down another one, put down another one, and here we have our little kick. But live recording is far easier. You just hit record and play. And we can use timing here to add a little hi-hat. And to add a new sample, select a slot, press sound, and then you can just type in the number of the sample or scroll through it. You can use shift here, for example, to move more quickly. Have a little snap here. And if I want to, I can also lengthen it. So you hit record, and you can see here it says length. And here I can just press plus to increase the number of bars. Now you can go up, I think, until 99 bars. You can build pretty long patterns in here. And the patterns are individual for the 4 layers or banks of samples. To get a count in, I hit record, press play. And if I'm not happy, I can just hold erase, hold the pad, and that erases that particular track, or you can target the entire group and it erases everything. And if I don't want to record quantized, I can just hit timing here. And you see this little blinking thing here, it says Q, just move over to free and it's unquantized recording. You can also quantize after the fact. Let's go to group B here and try and find a bass sound that we like. Now you can play it chromatically by hitting key. It lights up here, the keys. I want this to be longer. I want it to be 4 bars. And we just do like this. Now we can go to sound, we can increase the level. You can also change the pitch. Now let's go back to the rhythm, and as I said, we have this timing button here. And if I select it and I change here, we can select different quantizations, which also affects the note repeat. And this also affects quantization. So if it's on 16th notes, and quantization it's on, it will quantize to 16th notes. So next up, let's talk about the fader. You can select the target which the fader affects. So at the moment it's set to effects, but we can also do high pass filter. We can do a low pass filter. Let's set the fader to effects. Now, to access the effects, you just press the effects button here. It's very easy. We have multiple different effects, but it's only one send effects for everything. So we have one master compressor, I believe, and then it's one send effect. We have it set to off. We can set it to delay, reverb, distortion, chorus, filter, compressor, and that's it pretty much. So we could use it, for example, for the drums here. use some distortion here on the drums. And we can also record the fader movement into the sequencer. And if you don't like the fader movement, you can just hit erase and fader and remove it. Now I want to add some sort of melody, and one thing that this device can do, which is different from a lot of other similarly priced devices, is that it can play back samples, not just chromatically but also polyphonically, so you can play chords and stuff with it. I think it has 6 notes of polyphony if you're using stereo samples and 12 with mono samples. So I've got a mono piano, and here I want to add some effects. I'm gonna change from distortion to reverb. And all of the effects have 2 parameters that you can change. Something that's important to note also is that you can't record these 2 knobs here into the sequencer. It's only the fader. This is something I don't particularly like, because if you have a hi-hat like this and I want to record a pitch change into the sequencer, this requires you to use the fader, and that affects the entire group. So you can't just record the pitch change for that particular sound, at least not in any way that I've figured out. Maybe it's something that they can add in a firmware update. And it's really that simple to make a beat. And what I did there was I engaged the punch-in effects or performance effects. I prefer to call it performance effects because punch-in effects is basically it's a marketing term. So it's performance effects. You hold down effects and then you have 12 performance effects that do various things like low pass, high pass, and beat repeat. And you can also hold multiple ones at the same time. And we also have this one, which like pitches everything down, making it super vibey. And as you can hear, these are pressure sensitive. Up and down. In technical terms, these groups are identical, but it's good to sort of sort your beat in, for example, A for drums, B for bass, C for melody stuff. And this is because of how the fader works and that it affects the groups independently. So, for example, if I have the drums, I can set it to low pass for the drums, and I can just go to my melody group here and add a lot of effect here, for example, and then I can just low pass it as well. And I added some birds, because why not? I don't know what's going on here. Something that really opened up the K.O II for me was connecting a MIDI keyboard, because you can not only play the samples chromatically on it, you can also play chords, which is a lot of fun, and it can sound something like this. as you might have heard from me playing, the K.O. II actually time stretches the notes when you play them polyphonically, which means that it doesn't just pitch up the sound, because that would sound awful above, say, 1 octave. You can have just one sample, you can play it over multiple octaves, and it sounds pretty good. It's actually a nice time stretching algorithm. And being able to play samples polyphonically like that is something that sets it apart from, say, the Digitakt and Circuit Rhythm, and it shares that functionality with, say, the Live and Lo-Fi 12 and the SP404 and more advanced samplers like the Machina Plus and MPC. And we can turn that sound into a pad by increasing the attack and the release. And since the K.O. II does not have an arpeggiator, pairing it with a MIDI keyboard that has an arpeggiator is actually a lot of fun. I would love to see an arpeggiator on the K.O. II. You can hold down timing for note repeats, but there's no arpeggiator function, so I think they could implement that in the future. It's on my wish list. One limitation of this setup, however, is that you have to be on the group where the sample is located. As you can see, when I change groups or layers, the sound changes. And I'm not sure if there's a workaround so that you can always play this particular sound even if you change on the device. I'm not entirely sure. I've looked in the manual. Maybe there's a workaround, maybe not. And the way you set up a MIDI keyboard is super simple. You just have your normal MIDI cable here, output from the MIDI keyboard into one of these adapters. I have the Electron adapter here. It's a DIN MIDI to TRS adapter, and then you go MIDI in here. And then you select your sound, hold Shift Sound, and go to MIDI, and make sure it's set to channel 1. And then you can quickly scroll through the different sounds. And you can, of course, record the MIDI into the sequencer. So here I have length 8. So I'm going to make sure that the timing is free. And there we have it. And I love the fact that you can record without quantization and that you can also quantize after the fact. It makes for a really smooth workflow, and I think using it with a MIDI keyboard makes actually a lot of sense. Sampling on the K.O. II is actually very easy. It's one of the easier samplers to get going with in general. I think that's a huge selling point. It's very immediate. If you compare it to, for example, the SP404, that one has a lot more power. It's just a much more capable sampler, but it's also way more difficult to get going with. It took me quite a while to learn the SP404 Mark II, and this one I learned in a day. So sampling is super simple. You just hit sample here. And then this starts to blink, and you just press an empty pad that you want to sample into. You can also select whether it's recording from the left, right. You can see here left, right, center. And you can also, if you go to main here, you can listen on the incoming signal here through the effect. I'm just going to press sample. We have a slot here, hold it down, and it samples. Select another slot. And when you are in sampling mode, you can also set the level here of the incoming audio, as well as the threshold. So basically where the sampling starts. But a huge and important difference between this and, for example, the SP404 Mark II is that you cannot resample. There is no resampling functionality built into the device. This is a big difference. This is actually something I'd love to see in a future update. If they could add resampling in some way so you can sample the internal sound, that would make a lot of sense since there's only one effect. So if I have, say, a melody or a sound that I want reverb on, there's no way to add that to the sound and then, say, use a delay. But if I could resample the sound with the reverb, that would be really nice. And sampling works just as well for sampling synths into it. So here we have a nice little bass sound. Go to group B where my basses are hiding. We have this one, but I've removed the pattern. Hit sample, and we just go. And if we want to, we can go sound, and here's sound edit. So here we can select whether we want it to be a one-shot, polyphonic sound or in legato, as well as trim the sound. And we have an envelope with attack here and release. An important thing to remember, however, is that if you change the sound, the settings for trim and so on is not saved. So if you accidentally change the sound, which is quite easy to do, and you then change back, you will have to re-trim it and change the settings back to whatever they were for that particular sound, because it's not saved with the sample. It's saved with the pattern, but if you change the sound, it goes away because it's a non-destructive editing. And why not sample a loop? So I'm going to hit sample. I'm going to hit an empty slot. And now the sample is really fast. So we're going to go in here, sound edit, and we're going to change it to one shot. And then we're going to move over. So in the sound edit menu, you have the trimming, you have the envelope, attack, release, and we have the time setting. So instead of having it off, let's turn it on to BPM. And we can set the BPM over here. And now it plays at 120 BPM. But you can also play it in different pitches. So I'm just gonna go in here and I'm gonna erase all of the patterns here that I've created so far, and we're gonna build up something new from scratch because it's more fun. Okay, let's go. So yeah, it's a pretty cool little device. There is also sample chopping, but I want to be super clear. Sample chopping on this device is way more rudimentary than on, say, an SP404 Mark II or something even more advanced like an MPC or a Machina. And since I don't sample and chop up samples a lot in my own music and workflow, I don't have like a cool vinyl player to put here on the table, so I will just show you this in a very basic way. So we press sample. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 in Swedish. And now we can just hit shift and chop. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now there's a few more small things that I want to talk about, and one thing is song mode or a lack thereof. So basically you have patterns per group here. So you see here A02, that's a pattern, and you can commit, so hold shift and press main here. Now we have created a new scene. So we go from scene 02 to scene 03. But as far as I know, there's no way to like chain these scenes together to create a longer arrangement. You basically have to jump between them. Maybe that's something coming in a future update. What good are different scenes? Well, if we go to scene number 3 here, we can, for example, erase the entire drum pattern here, and we can go to scene 2. To scene number 3. And back again. And it's not a song mode, it's just a way for us to transition between different parts of a song. I think that this is a part where they can definitely improve it a bit. I'm not gelling very well with it, but I also think that it's something that you can get used to, and it's also something that I think they probably can improve with future firmware. Before I talk about my kind of first experiences with the K.O., some pros, cons, some stuff that didn't work, here's a word from today's sponsor. Here's 5 reasons to try out DistroKid. Firstly, you sign up for about $20 a year and you can upload unlimited amounts of music. Secondly, it's really quick and easy to upload. Basically, anyone can do it without any prior knowledge. 3. There are different tiers of subscriptions, so if you want to release your music under, say, different artist names, or if you're starting a label, DistroKid has an option for you. 4. DistroKid lets you upload to relevant stores and streaming services, such as Spotify and iTunes, and it doesn't take long for the music to be available in the stores. 5. There's also the hyperfollow feature, which automatically creates a custom page where people can find out where to buy or listen to your music, and I personally really like this feature. So go and check out DistroKid using my link in the description, you get a little discount and you support the channel. So that was all the tutorial and music that you'll get in today's video. Lastly, I just want to talk about a few things that I don't like, a few things that needs improving, and a few things that are a little weird, I guess. So let me just talk about it here. So first up, I'm quite on the fence about the whole patterns and scenes layout. I think you can get used to it, but for me personally, I find it a little bit difficult to wrap my head around. It's not easy to make an arrangement on it. Recording automations, it's a little weird. Maybe I'm doing something wrong, or maybe they just need to update the firmware, but certain things, for example, recording the fader for the high pass filter and low pass filter doesn't seem to record into the sequencer, or I'm doing something wrong. I can't get that to work. And also we have these two knobs here that are used for amp and pitch, and they aren't recorded into the sequencer. And that's important because they are per sound. And like I showed you previously, when you use the fader, it's per group, or per group here. So I would love it if we could do, for example, pitch changes per sound and record that into the sequencer. Maybe you can somehow, but I'm putting it out there that I haven't been able to figure that one out. Also, I've seen reports that the fader hasn't been working for a few people. I'm not sure if it's a build quality issue, if it's just, the one-off. I think they've made quite a few and sold quite a few, so we'll have to wait and see kind of where it lands. But I wanted to add to that my speakers suddenly stopped working, and I don't know why. I tried and look in the settings, but I couldn't figure out why it stopped working. So yeah, maybe it's a problem with the firmware, maybe it's a hardware problem, I don't know. And here's another thing I love to see. If you hold effects and hit one of these buttons, you engage one of the performance effects or punch-in effects. Now, Punch-in effects suggests to me, because punching in is something recording related, at least in my world, so it suggests to me that they should be working like they do on the K.O, where you can actually punch in the effects in your recording, so you can record the effects, but you can't here. So basically they are only on and off. You can't record them into the sequencer, and I would love that. That's a no-brainer. I understand that with the layout, with the groups having individual patterns and individual lengths of the patterns, I'm not sure entirely how that would work, but it would be a great addition to an already fun device. And then there's one thing that we need on this device. It's some kind of resampling. I think it's a no-brainer to be able to resample the device, especially when you only have the one send effect, for example. So being able to sample internally would be really nice. I mean, would it be difficult if you hit sample here, for example, and here it says mic, and you should just be able to go here and change it to internal, for example. And I would also love it if timing could be used not just for note repeats, but as some kind of arpeggiator. Now, last in today's video, last answer, the question in the title, is the device living up to the hype? And for me, it kind of. I think it's a little overblown. I don't think this is the one sampler that will save us all, if you get my meaning. I think it's a great device. It's a fun instrument. I think a lot of people will have a lot of fun with it, as all of Teenage Engineering's instruments are. It's very, very well designed. Sure, it's lacking a few things. Sure, it can be improved, but you know, it's early days. We'll probably get some firmware updates down the line, but overall, it is a great instrument. It's very fun to play with, as I hope I've showed you in today's video, and it's very easy to make music with. It's actually one of the easier samplers that I've worked with, especially compared to some of the competition like the Sonicware Live and Lo-Fi 12, which is kind of, yeah, it has its own little wonky workflow. It's an acquired taste compared to the SP404 Mark II, which is way more capable, but also way more complicated. But not everyone wants that. Some just want a small, portable, capable little device that you can make beats and music on the fly, even though the clacky keys might be a little annoying if you're sitting at a coffee shop or in a bus. But regardless, it's a fun instrument, it's well designed, and I think it has a bright future ahead of it, but I don't think it's the one sampler to rule them all. Instead, it's one of many great samplers out there today, and I'm glad that we have a lot to pick from. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. Talk to you all later.